Welcome to Clear Money Talk, where we turn complex financial topics into clear conversations.
I'm Tyler Andrews.
And I'm Tim Clairmont. Let's begin.
All right. Topic of the day for all you listeners. Can you talk about money without starting a family feud?
Ooh, boy.
We all know that scary monster in the closet, money, right? It's an uncomfortable conversation. For many people, it's very difficult to bring up money, especially in family situations. So I thought this would be a fun one for us to talk about today, Tim. Maybe give some insights on ways we found to help bridge the gaps between people that are having those difficult conversations and to make them a little bit easier and just share some of our insights with that.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think it's a great idea. A lot of people try to avoid those conversations for a multitude of reasons, and it's really not one of those things that you should avoid in certain circumstances. So figuring out how to conquer that fear and that concern and really address the financial elements as soon as you can when it's important to is it's something we've learned how to do fairly well over the last few decades. So we're happy to give you some insights into how you might be able to accomplish that more effectively. We'll definitely do that during today's show. It's funny. It just reminds me of the three things that they always tell you never to talk about. It's like politics, religion, and money, right? Those are like the three things they say. Don't talk about that because you can, start so much, negativity and opinionated commentary back and forth. So you try to generally avoid those topics in social settings unless you're looking for a healthy debate. But when it comes to family and discussing financial, that financial element, there are a lot of reasons why it becomes very important. And at some point, I think this is the best way to frame this for you. At some point in your life before you pass away, there's going to be a time when you're going to want to talk about your money with somebody else who will take care of the money after you pass away. And whether that somebody else is just an attorney or a financial advisor, like us as a professional financial advisor, or if it's your spouse, or if it's your children, or if it's a very specific individual you intend to, represent your estate, like your personal representative, often referred to as an executor or executrix. Those are some of the people you might want to talk about. But the more that ultimate beneficiaries understand your values and your intentions behind your wealth, the more accurately they're going to be able to reflect those values later on when you're no longer there. And if that matters to you, then conversations at an earlier date are one of the easiest ways to ensure that more than your money passes on, your values actually pass on as well. That being said, there are other reasons to discuss money with family that come into play. What about teaching your children about money? The kids who aren't understanding money will oftentimes make a ton of financial mistakes in their 20s and 30s, and they might have been able to avoid those if you have a good conversation with them. So when are you talking to your kids about money? How are you teaching them about good habits? Spend less than your paycheck. That's probably one of the most important habits you can learn. So if you can teach your kids to spend less than their allowance or their income as they have a little bit of income, that'll be huge for them. And credit card debt is rampant amongst 20-somethings because there's a lot of high-interest credit card companies that will target kids in college so they can get these credit cards, and then they just think like it's free money, and they scan. They don't even think about paying it off with all the interest that adds up. So be curious to see what outline we have in mind for today. But Tyler, what do you think? Where do you want to go?
Yeah, I think the gist of this topic is a lot of families and parents specifically will feel that they're protecting the peace within a household by not talking about money. But I think that oftentimes can lead to future conflicts because a lot of things are then based on assumptions. If things aren't vocalized or made clear with proper estate planning documents or proper conversations, then it leads the future generations receiving that money to make their own assumptions. And that's where conflicts arise. I've seen it firsthand with family personally. We've seen it firsthand personally with clients we work with. And I think we all probably know somebody or ourselves that have dealt with that because if something isn't clearly lined out, then there's assumptions that have to be made. So not a fun, but a statistic about this is 70% of all wealth transfers fail, not based on poor planning, but based on poor communication. And I thought that is a nice way to tie all this together for conversational purposes. So just remember that 70% of wealth transfers fail, not because of bad planning, but because of bad communications. So
that's really powerful. I like that you said clear at least 3 or 4 times when you were talking naturally.
This is clear money talk.
No, it's fun to to be able to be here and help you, because that's really what this is about. If you've been avoiding a conversation with a family member because you just feel like you need to avoid it or you want to avoid it, and maybe this topic triggered for you, it's like, well, maybe I should listen to that podcast really quick or watch what Tim and Tyler have to say about that. I'm hoping that this encourages you to take the step of having the conversation, because I would always rather see you have the conversations and be clear about things up front versus not having the conversations and then having the individuals have to make assumptions later on. No matter how good your estate plan is, no matter how articulate your will and your trust documents are, no matter how much you might have left a testamentary video where you're even communicating to the beneficiaries, this is what you want done, there will be at least a little bit of gray somewhere in that plan. And that gray is the part where the beneficiaries are wondering what you wanted, wondering what they're supposed to do, and they don't have that guidance because you're not there anymore. And you can shrink the amount of gray by having those conversations early and often about, or at least regularly, not necessarily often, but at least regularly about the plan and what is it that you're trying to to do. Because when you have money, you get the right to vote those dollars. You can spend them however you want. When you die, someone else is going to vote those dollars for you. They're going to take that money, they're going to spend it on whatever they want to spend it on. Maybe that doesn't bother you. Maybe you're okay with them spending it on whatever they spend it on. But that's okay. I suspect if that was the case, you probably wouldn't have clicked on this podcast as much, unless you just really like Tyler and I. So
That's fair too.
So if you feel like you care what people do with your money, then it's important to have those conversations earlier. And you may have an individual that you're really concerned about. Maybe their current financial habits are not aligned with yours. Perhaps they spend more frivolously on things that you would rather they didn't spend on. Maybe their lifestyle choices are not the same lifestyle choices that you would like, but you love them and they're important to you, and you intend to leave money to them, and you're worried about how they're going to use that money. That's an exact example of where a little bit of education can help that individual so that they understand what your intentions are and what matters to you. You can put some real structure around that by limiting and restricting what they're able to talk about. What they're able to spend money on. Not what they're able to talk about, you can't do that. But what they're able to spend money on when they receive it. Because you could leave your money in what's called a trust if you choose to, and then you can put rules around the trust that say you can only spend it on these things. But the other element of that is really to leave intentions without so much restriction, and at least communicate this is what you would like to see them do. And if you want them to build habits or lifestyle choices that are more similar to what you value, then having conversations about money, not in a if you do this I'll give you this way, but in a let me just explain to you what's important to me before I may end up leaving some funds to you way, that can be very, very productive. And oftentimes we serve as mediators of sorts in those conversations. Clients will come in and rather than having that conversation cold with their loved ones, we'll just say, hey, come on in and bring your beneficiaries and let's have a joint conversation together. And I'll teach them about the basics of what the situation is, and we'll disclose only the part of your plan that you want to disclose. So if there's elements you want to keep private, maybe even the total amount of money you intend to leave behind, you don't have to tell them that. We have clients who are worth millions and millions of dollars that their children have no clue that they're worth that kind of money, and they want to keep it that way. They don't want their kids counting on receiving a large inheritance. They're worried that might change the way that their kids would behave. Maybe they wouldn't work as hard if they knew that this big chunk of money was coming later. But at the same time, they also understand that they want their kids to have good discipline about managing money and investing with money and minimizing taxes and doing smart things with money, because they will come into a significant amount of money later. And that means you want to have the conversation, you want to be open and transparent about what matters to you and your values and try to help them, but that doesn't mean you have to tell them how much money they're going to come into if that's important to you to not share. On the other hand, we have other clients that are very open about even that, and that's okay too. We can work it either way.
Yeah, Tim, you did a great job. Obviously,
throw it up off the top of my head.
You did phenomenal, because I think the listeners would say, okay, well, how do I start that conversation? And you did a great job of saying it doesn't have to be about numbers. It could be about shared values. It can be about what is important to us and the values that we find important. don't have to be, in line with yours, and you can keep it that way and not have to bring numbers into the conversation. If you want to bring numbers into the conversation, like you said, totally fine. But shared values, I think, is a very nice common ground where you can talk about money that way inside of a family dynamic without starting a feud, because feuds will usually start when there's a quantity of something involved. So I appreciate you doing that. And like you said, if emotions do run high because it's a sensitive topic, maybe you've ran into these issues before with family involving a third party, whether it's a trusted neighbor, family, friend, someone like that, or a professional like an attorney, a CPA, or a financial advisor like ourselves, is a great way to bring in somebody that's doesn't have any conflicts of interest, because no matter what happens, they're not affected, and they can share their insights and help to bridge those gaps. Oftentimes is great. So,
well, and there's even ways too, when you leave your money behind in trust for the benefit of your beneficiaries, you can actually give some instruction to that trustee to say, hey, we want you to work with our financial advisor that we've been working with. We know that financial advisor understands our values and our plans and our goals, and we want that advisor to advise our children and or our other beneficiaries as well. And we want to make sure that they continue to manage the assets while they're with you as the trustee. And you could have a special trustee that that serves as making sure distributions go the way you want, and represents your values that way. But you can also have somebody like ourselves as financial advisors consistently managing the assets in the way that you've also come to appreciate it, and be there as a sounding board for the trustee to have conversations when they're struggling with some of those gray areas that they have to answer when you're not there.
Yeah, very well said. And that kind of leads into one of the things I wanted to talk about, Tim, which was tools that help keep families united in these situations, which you're hitting on a few of them, but maybe let's just read them for the listener's purpose here. Written letters of intent, family meetings, or even recorded video messages. I think you hit on all those earlier, which can be great mediums to articulate and relay those instructions and your wishes to that next generation. So
yeah, if you have, none of us knows when our time is going to be coming up. I really hope that mine's a long time from now. I'm trying to live to 200. I hope all of yours are as well, that you're with us for a very long time. But there's going to be a time when that's your time. And it is what it is. It's just the way it is, being human, right? Every January, I go sit down with my legal documents and I take a look and I say, if this is the year that it's my time, if I pass away this year, is this going to go the way I want? And I read my documents, and if the answer comes back, yep, that looks good, I feel good. I don't worry about it for another year. If the answer comes back no, or I don't know, or I check with my attorney and make sure I update my legal documents, and then I don't worry about it for another year. Either way, it's not a chronic worry of mine. It's just something I deal with, like brushing my teeth or going to the dentist or seeing my annual doctor for an annual physical. It's just a routine process that I do to take care of my situation. Now, your case may not be as complicated that you even want to look at it once a year, but if you haven't looked at it in the last 3 years, it's probably been too long. You need to take a look at what's going on and make sure it's really still the same, because our lives change really quickly, and what we want to communicate, that's important to keep up to date, just because it does matter, and it can be life-changing. We all know stories. I would imagine you know stories of people who have received a large amount of money and changed their lives completely, and not necessarily for the better. That money did more damage than good in some of those situations. There's all kinds of circumstances where that can be the case. That's the most important thing we want to protect against, and communication up front, as well as maybe some good rules in a legal documentation are two of the best ways to make sure that kind of problem doesn't arise. And then, having that little video maybe every 5 years, do a video. You don't have to do that every year. If you want to, that's great. But, just pull out your phone and be like, hey, listen, this isn't my last will and testament. I just wanted to talk to you as a beneficiary. If this is the year I go, or if this is the last message I get to tell you, here's what matters to me. And just talk freely and record that and share that with your attorney and your personal executor, executrix, whoever your personal representative is that's going to settle your estate. And they can share that video with your beneficiaries if something were to happen to you at that time. And just keep it up to date at maybe every 5 years or so. You can do it more often if you want to, but just some good practical ways for you to get rid of that burden that you might be feeling right now that made you click on, let's watch this podcast, because there's some reason why you're watching this. And that means there's something there's a sliver that you need to take out, and it's bugging you. And that's something we can help you take care of.
Yeah. Money should be a tool to help unify people, not divide, right? And a thoughtful plan in place is important. Most people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan, right? We've heard that in previous podcasts. I love to throw that out there because it's true. So a thoughtful plan will include both communication and strategy. And by doing so, you can help to preserve not only relationships, but also preserve wealth as it's passed on between generation to the next generation. So, yeah.
Good.
I feel good about all that stuff.
That's good stuff. I feel like we covered some good ground.
We did cover a lot of good stuff here.
Yeah. Do you want to do just the answer and keep this as a short show, or is there any more you want to expound on?
No, I think this topic can be perceived as twofold, though. I think it can be perceived as financial literacy and education, educating the next generation, educating other members in your household. We more focused on the wealth preservation, wealth transfer aspect of it, which oftentimes is usually where more sensitivity and emotions will come into play on who receives what and of how much and of what quantity and all that stuff. That's usually where you can see these feuds, which is part of the topic of the conversation today, where those things can arise. So we wanted to give some areas of focus where we've found success and where we've heard others have success in those categories to try to help mitigate and make that an easier process for you whenever that time does come. But I also think the latter is important too, that financial literacy and education within a household is extremely important too.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lack of good, solid financial literacy and knowledge in our country. Unfortunately, they don't teach it in many of the elementary, middle, and high schools. College, you have to seek it out to a certain extent. Like no one teaches you how to write a check anymore, or how to balance a checkbook, or what a credit card does and doesn't do, like all those things. So being somebody in a household that has that knowledge that can pass it on to somebody else in your household, I think can also be extremely important too.
Yeah, they used to teach personal finance when I was in high school, and I don't even know if they teach that anymore as a topic. It used to be a mandatory requirement in order to graduate. I know I've given speeches before to high school classes. If you're in a position where you can influence that, I would be happy to talk to a large audience like that to try to educate our youth on financial literacy and understand that. With that in mind, one of the things we do annually, and if you're interested in this, is next year, we don't have the date yet, but we will be setting it soon, we'll be doing a workshop for our clients, for beneficiaries of our clients. So we'll educate the beneficiaries of our clients just to let them know, hey, this is some good basic stuff that you should know about money and about learning these kinds of things. If you're interested in working with a financial professional, and you don't have a good relationship, whether you don't have any relationship or you don't particularly like your relationship, give us a call, 503-579-1000. We can always book a little 15-minute clarity call. And if you're one of our clients, we would be happy to have your beneficiaries join us for the workshop next year and teach them about money, because sometimes the same words can come out of someone else's mouth and they stick. If you've ever tried to teach something to a very, very close loved one, whether it's your child or your spouse, for example, and then someone else says the exact same thing and they turn around and say, oh my God, that's the most brilliant thing ever. And you're like, that's what I've been telling you. We can do that. We can be that someone else, at least get the message into the kids, even though you're the one who's been saying it for so long. That's sometimes just hard to listen to the person who's so close to them.
Yeah, well said. Well said. All right, let's do just the answer here.
Wrap us up.
You want me to take it away?
Yeah, go for it, Tyler. Just the answer. Here we go.
All right, just the answer. Our topic of the day was, can you talk about money without starting a family feud? I think the short answer is yes, if done appropriately and correctly. So Tim and I talked about some of the common ways that we found success in helping others talk about money within a household, specifically when it comes to wealth transfer to the next generation. We did say and mention that financial literacy, financial education, and communication within a household is extremely important, and that can probably aid in the eventual conversations about wealth transfer to the next generation. But our topic of the day pretty much focused on wealth transfer to the next generation and how to have those conversations in a nice dynamic. So one of the ways we talked about is how to start the conversation the right way. Right, so it doesn't always have to be about numbers. It can be about shared values. Talking about shared values within a household, what money means to you might mean something different to the next person, what money means for them. So making sure that everybody is in proper alignment with shared values can help to bridge some of those gaps and make it an easier conversation for everyone to have, and not have to bring numbers and quantities into the conversation, which oftentimes that's where emotions become strong, because one person might be receiving more or less or things like that. So shared values can be a nice, easy way into that conversation. We also talked about, if emotions do run high, bringing in a third party is oftentimes a great way to have somebody share their thoughts and opinions and help communicate between different members of a household, we do this often with clients when they want to bring in beneficiaries, or if there is between spouses, even you can see this where money is a difficult conversation for those two to have. Bringing in somebody like a financial advisor, a trusted party that you have, whether it's a neighbor, a friend, or a CPA, these types of relationships can help in those conversations. So bringing in a third party can also help to start the conversation the right way. We talked about what to share and what not to share. So transparency is key. We're all about transparency. We want to, be fully transparent about everything we talk about. That might not be the same within a household when they're talking about money. So it does build trust, but sometimes too much detail too soon can be overwhelming or can divide. So take that into account if you are preparing for these conversations or if you're in the midst of these conversations already. And we also talked about focus on explaining intent. So talk about the why behind decisions, not just the what. That can also help with these. Talked about tools that can help keep families united during these conversations. So Tim talked about a lot of brilliant ideas. One of them is like written letters of intent. Obviously, having your wishes and your intents written out on pen to paper is extremely helpful. So that way there's no ambiguity, there's no assumptions that have to be made. If it's there in front of somebody, your wishes, it's a lot easier for the others to decipher what your intentions are with the money. Family meetings, as we mentioned earlier, and also recorded video messages. I don't think about that one often, but recorded video messages of you can have your emotions and your tone come through on the hows and the whats and the whys. I think that's a great idea too. So I'm happy that Tim brought that up during the podcast.
The long version of this has a lot of really good stuff in it. So I appreciate the summary that Tyler's sharing. And if you're just watching the Just the Answer, as always, I think you can get a lot more out of watching the long version of the show. The one thing I want to add that was part of that, include that in both Just the Answer as well as our long version of the show. When you pick the third party that's going to assist you in those conversations, whether it's between you and your spouse or you and your beneficiaries or you and your spouse and your beneficiaries, I think that EQ is really important. Think of that emotional quotient. How good are they at having conversations in a respectful way that's going to keep the balance in the room? Your accountant, your attorney, your financial advisor, your neighbor, your friend, your family member, each one of those individuals is going to have a different level of sensitivity and understanding and ability to communicate. And I would argue that we are quite talented at that, having a good balanced conversation and educating the whole room while still maintaining a sense of decorum and clarity around what wants to be disclosed, what doesn't want to be disclosed, amongst the parties that want to be involved. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do, and that might be why you're struggling and wanting to watch this particular podcast, because you're like, I don't know how to even start. Well, you could focus on values and stuff like that, but another option is pick that third party intermediary and make sure that they have the knowledge of your situation and the feelings enough to care about your situation and the wisdom to articulate things cleanly and manage that room in that kind of appointment. So
yeah. We'll end Just the Answer with this. Money is a tool for unity, not division. A thoughtful plan includes both strategy and communication. With all that taken into account, that will help you preserve wealth and also preserve relationships, which I'm sure if you guys are anything like us, we want to make sure that our wealth goes to whom we want it to and how we want it to, but also that relationships continue to exist beyond our existence too.
That's good, man. Nice. I like that. Good finish. All right.
You ready for some trivia?
Yeah, hit me with it. What do you got?
We got a fun one.
Stump the Nerd.
Stump the Nerd. Which product holds the record for being the most expensive item ever sold at auction?
Ooh,
I'm
interesting.
going to have to give you some choices here.
Yeah, I think you are. Most expensive item ever sold at auction. There have been a lot of pretty crazy stories that we've heard over our lifetime, but hit me with it. What are some of the choices of the items that I have?
Okay, option A is Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi painting. Option B is a 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR. That thing sounds cool. Option C is the Hope Diamond. And option D is the Codex by Leonardo da Vinci.
The Codex by Leonardo da Vinci. So you got two Leonardo da Vinci's there. You got his painting or the Codex, and then you have the Hope Diamond, and then you have the Mercedes car. Man, boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
This one isn't as...
That's not an obvious thing. I mean, I feel like the Hope Diamond feels like a really good answer there in general. Like, I feel like that makes sense. But at the same time, I feel like if I have to pick, I'm gonna go with let's go with Leonardo da Vinci's Codex. But I'm guessing. So what do we got?
Yep, it's not that, unfortunately.
Okay, all right.
It's the car.
Is it really?
It's a car.
Oh my goodness.
So
there we go.
The
How much did it go
1955
for?
Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR sold for $143 million
Wow.
at auction in 2022, making it the
Wow.
most expensive car in item ever auctioned.
Wow. Do we know what the other was sold for?
No, I don't.
Oh man, you're killing me.
Sorry, man.
143
You're gonna have to
million
go
for the
Google
car,
that.
something
Yeah.
less for the other three.
That is an expensive car. So if everyone tells you that cars are bad investments, just reference the 1955 Mercedes. That seems like that was probably a pretty good investment for somebody.
There you go. And you can always Google Leonardo da Vinci's two items there and see what they sold for, as well as the Hope Diamond. Or, you use Perplexity or ChatGPT or whatever other resource you may have.
Medium
to
of
find the
choice.
answer. Yes, correct. Well, thank you. Yeah.
We hope that we're your medium of choice for podcasts.
There we go.
Especially financial podcasts. Thank you for tuning in. It's always fun doing this and helping educate and spread the good word about money stuff. So
Thanks for joining us on Clear Money Talk. Until next time.
Tim Clairmont and Tyler Andrews are investment advisor representatives offering securities and advisory services through Cetera Wealth Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. The views depicted in this material are for information purposes only and are not necessarily those of Cetera Wealth Services, LLC. They should not be considered specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Cetera Wealth Services, LLC exclusively provides investment products and services through its representatives. Although Cetera does not provide tax or legal advice or supervise tax, accounting, or legal services, Cetera representatives may offer these services through their independent, outside business. This information is not intended as tax or legal advice. All investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will be successful. Examples referenced are hypothetical only and do not represent the actual performance of any particular investments. Converting from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. A Roth IRA offers tax-free withdrawals on taxable contributions. To qualify for the tax-free and penalty-free withdrawal or earnings, a Roth IRA must be in place for at least 5 tax years, and the distribution must take place after age 59 and a half, or due to death, disability, or a first-time home purchase, up to a $10,000 lifetime maximum. Depending on state law, Roth IRA distributions may be subject to state taxes. Distributions from traditional IRAs and employer-sponsored retirement plans are taxed as ordinary income, and, if taken prior to reaching age 59 and a half, may be subject to an additional 10% IRS tax penalty. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks and charges, and expenses of mutual funds and ETFs carefully before investing. The prospectus, which contains this and other information about the funds and ETFs, can be obtained directly from the company or from your financial professional. The prospectus should be read carefully before investing or sending money. A diversified portfolio does not assure a profit or protect against loss in a declining market. Dollar cost averaging will not guarantee a profit or protect you from loss, but may reduce your average cost per share in a fluctuating market. Investors cannot invest directly in indexes. The performance of any index is not indicative of the performance of any investment and does not take into account the effects of inflation and the fees and expenses associated with investing. Although it is possible to have guaranteed income for life with a fixed annuity, there is no assurance that this income will keep up with inflation. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years or during the rate guarantee period. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years that you own the contract. Withdrawals prior to age 59 and a half may result in a 10% IRS tax penalty in addition to any ordinary income tax. The guarantee of the annuity is backed by the financial strength of the underlying insurance company. Investment subaccount values will fluctuate with changes in market conditions. An investment in a variable annuity involves investment risk, including possible loss of principal. Variable annuities are designed for long-term investing. The contract, when redeemed, may be worth more or less than the total amount invested. Variable annuities are subject to insurance-related charges, including mortality and expense charges, administrative fees, and the expenses associated with the underlying sub-accounts. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks, and charges and expenses of the variable annuity carefully before investing. The prospectus contains this and other information about the variable annuity. Contact Clear Financial Partners at info@clearfp.com or 503-579-1000 to obtain a prospectus, which should be read carefully before investing or sending money. The cost and availability of life insurance depend on factors such as age, health, and the type and amount of insurance purchased. Before implementing a strategy involving life insurance, it would be prudent to make sure that you are insurable by having the policy approved. As with most financial decisions, there are expenses associated with the purchase of life insurance. Policies commonly have mortality and expense charges. In addition, if a policy is surrendered prematurely, there may be surrender charges and income tax implications. The target date of a target date fund may be a useful starting point in selecting a fund, but investors should not rely solely on the date when choosing a fund or deciding to remain invested in one. Investors should consider funds' asset allocation over the whole life of the fund. Often, target date funds invest in other mutual funds, and fees may be charged by both the target date fund and the underlying mutual funds. The principal value of these funds is not guaranteed at any time, including at the target date. Cetera does not offer any direct investments, endorsements, or advice as it relates to Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. This is for informational purposes only. Bank certificate of deposits are insured by an agency of the federal government and offer a fixed rate of return, whereas both the principal and yield of investment securities will fluctuate with changes in market conditions. Clear Financial Partners is located at 15573 Bangui Road, Suite 100, Lake Oswego, Oregon 97035. For more information, please call us at 503-579-1000.